There are two modules besides the turtle module that are very, very useful to us when we're writing at least beginning computer programs, as well as even much more sophisticated programs. The first of those modules is what's referred to as the math module. And almost every programming language in one way or another supplies a library of mathematical functions. And Python is no exception to that. Python provides a very sophisticated math library, and we can, just like we do with the turtle, import that math module and then gain access to all of the functionality that's contained there. And so if we want to find out what the math module allows, we can do the same thing as we've seen previous. We can go to the Python documentation, and then from there go to the module index, and then scroll down and look up the math module. And then we see that the math module contains mathematical functions, and as we look, we notice lots of different things that we would have been made familiar with in math class or algebra or geometry. So we have the trigonometric functions and some calculation type functions, logarithmic functions, raising something to a power, square root, angular measures, transformations of angles from degrees to radians, and so on. So this is a very powerful library for us. Also, you'll notice that there are two constants, the value of pi and the value of e, two very important mathematical values, mathematical constants that gets used in a number of places. And so, going back to our examples, when we import the math module and gain access to those things, we can then utilize the items that are stored there. And so, for example, we can print out the value of math.pi or math.e. We can use the square root function, math.square root. We can take the sine of 90 degrees if we turn it into radians. And so line 8 says take the sine of 90 degrees, but we have to convert 90 degrees to radians using the radians function of the math library. And then we can take the sine of that. And so when we run this, we see pi is 3.14159 and so on. E is 2.718, square root of 2. The sine of 90 degrees is 1. And it's simply a very nice way for us to be able to quickly utilize functionality that we are used to seeing in most programming languages, and in fact on most calculators. Now the other module that's very useful to us is called random. And what the random module does is it provides us with a number of different random number generators. And what that means is that it provides us with the capability of creating random values in a number of different ways based on a number of statistical distributions. The most common distribution is to think about just using a uniform distribution where any value in the range of possible values has an equal chance of being chosen. And so the two most important methods that we might utilize in the random module would be a method called random, a function called random, and then there is a function called randrange. The difference between those two is pretty simple. The random function returns a random number between 0 and 1. So every time I run the random function, I'll get a new value somewhere between 0 and 1, and the idea is that any value in that range has an equal chance of coming up. Likewise, if I use the function called randrange, I'm going to get a value in the range of integers, but it's going to work like the range function does, where I have a starting value and then up to but not including an ending value. So in this particular case, the randrange 1, 7 says I want to pick random integers out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, but not including 7. And it's going to be integers only. And so, like the range function producing a sequence of integers, the rand range function produces one of those integers, and again, each one has an equal chance of being selected. So when I run this, I see that the first thing that's presented is the floating point number between 0 and 1, and then the second is the value 4. And when I run it again, of course, I get a different value, and each time I run it, I'm going to get a new random number. And sometimes it's possible the same number could appear twice, but most of the time there'll be a pretty even distribution. So random number generators are very powerful tools, and the random module provides a lot of the functionality that we need to have different types of random numbers.